Hello, you all. In this lecture, I'm going to present to you some of the developments, some of the new developments in NVR that have taken place since the publication of my book, the first edition of my book, Nonviolent Resistance, in 2004. Okay, now there is already a second edition of the book, as you can see here. Okay, this is the new edition. So in this new edition, came out in 2021, and this new edition, there is already a description of all of the new developments, not only those that I'll be able to mention and somehow describe in this meeting, but many, many others, because this has been a very rich period. Hundreds of articles and books have been published in various languages, so that I'll be able to cover some of the most important things. So let us begin with the conceptual developments. First of all, NVR, nonviolent resistance, as you know, is actually an adaptation of the social-political doctrine and social-political strategy of nonviolent resistance developed by Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and many, many others. Okay, a description, an adaptation of these tactics, these strategies, these principles to the context of the family, the school, and afterwards also other institutions and the whole community. Nonviolent resistance originally, was designed to resist. That means to resist, to fight in nonviolent ways, to struggle in nonviolent ways against violence, oppression, exploitation, impulsiveness, risk behaviors, of children. That was our use of NVR. And already at the beginning, after we published the book and we lecture in schools, many parents asked whether NVR was also a preventive and not only an interventive approach. And actually, look, you cannot really resist something that still doesn't exist. You cannot fight against something. Prevention requires another frame of mind. So little by little, it took years until we developed this concept. We thought that prevention required a different view of authority. Why a different view of authority? What was wrong about the, let's say, traditional view of authority that we had? What was wrong is that we couldn't accept it anymore. We as a culture, we as a society could not accept that kind of authority of old because it was based on foundations that we don't at all see as educational, that don't meet anymore, don't fit anymore with our values, with our wishes, with our desires regarding how we want to rear our children. That kind of authority of old was based on distance. The parent or the teacher should be distant from the children as if on a pedestal. We don't accept it anymore. We want to be close to our child. That kind of authority was based on control, on really controlling the child, controlling not only his acts, but also his feelings and also his mind. And the role of the child was to obey. That was the goal of the authority. We can't accept it anymore. We're very suspicious of control. We see that as a negative goal in itself. And also, our wish is not to have obedient children as an end result of the educational process. We want children who display autonomy, who have initiative. So can we have authority and autonomy, authority and initiative? If we want some kind of authority that fits with our values, we should be able to define such a kind of authority. Then that authority of old was also very strictly hierarchic. The person at the top, be it parent, teacher, the principal, they had absolute Okay, authority sway over the children, control over the children below. They didn't have to give reckoning to anyone about what they are doing. Nobody should stick their nose at what I'm doing in my home or in my class. We can't accept it anymore. We have seen, we have learned that many people in authority, parents, teachers, and others, have abused their authority in horrible ways. So our society requires transparency, particularly when there are signs that things are not going as they should. So we don't accept it anymore. But can we have an authority in which there is transparency, which is not so strictly hierarchical? So those were some of the things that we had to answer. And this led to a new description of authority, a kind of authority that is good for us, for our generation or generations. Okay, there are here some 2 or 3 generations between me and the younger people in this audience. So we needed an authority that's good for us, a kind of authority, a model of authority, which you can say, I need this because the situation is problematic. I want this, that is, it fits with my values, with my wishes. And I can do this. That's it is not in a kind of theoretical heaven. Okay, it's attainable. Okay, I have to work to get it, but it is attainable. If we want to delineate some kind of authority that is really relevant for us, for our generations, we have to be able to get this kind of positive answer, this kind of positive echoes. I need it, I want it, and I can do it from parents, teachers, principals, and so forth. So I described a new authority, not in the sense that I invented this kind of authority, but in the sense that I described it, I systematized the description. We all know people or remember people who show this kind of authority, okay, from our past, or people that we know who really irradiate this kind of authority spontaneously. So looking at those people and what they do was one of the things that guided me in this description that led to the book, The New Authority, Family, School, and Community, okay? So I described, I systematized the new authority. I didn't invent it, create it out of nothing. It would be a bad idea if I had invented it. Any completely new idea in the field of education of children would probably be a bad one, because people have been thinking about it for thousands of years. So this is actually a description and a systematization. The description is necessary if we want to train, if we want to teach, if we want to foster it, we need it, such a description. And we needed some kind of authority, particularly because on the wake of our rejection of the authority of your, we found out, okay, hundreds and hundreds of studies show that without authority altogether, children don't grow up well at all. They have a series of handicaps. I will not cover now this research. Okay, the pioneer was Diane Baumring, but there are hundreds and hundreds of studies showing that if you try to raise children in complete freedom from authority, something bad happens. Okay, lots of bad things happen. So, I mean, in other words, children need clear boundaries, clear structure, and clear demands. Without that, what is in order to back clear boundaries, clear structure, and clear demands, you need authority. Okay, so that's the point. That's why we had to develop this concept of the new authority. And the foundations of this description of the new authority should be completely different and replace the foundations of the authority of your, that we no longer accept. So instead of distance, the thing that we don't want, there is presence, the decided presence of parents and teachers. They say, I'm here and I stay here. You can fire me. You can't divorce me. You can discard me. I'm here and I stay here. I'm here and I stay here when it is positive and harmonious, and I am here and I stay here when it is unpleasant. when you try to shake me off. Okay, this decided presence creates the backbone of authority. Okay, so presence instead of distance. And we described lots of means on how to increase parental presence, teacher presence before the individual student, teacher presence in the class, teacher presence in the courtyard, in the life of the students with the parents' presence. Okay, it was not only saying you need presence, but in the systematization, okay, I also wanted to help, okay, people in the helping protection professions to be able to coach parents, train parents, instruct parents, help parents to develop those kinds of presence. Then, instead of that hierarchic model, okay, we wanted a model in which the authority person was supported and legitimized. It was not there alone, okay, at the apex of this pyramid, but was supported and legitimized by its surroundings. Not only, we said, authority will be based on the support and legitimization, but we developed ways to create it, to foster the support. In every treatment with a family, we develop a support system. Okay? We recruit, we engage a support system for the parents. We convince the parents. Doing this is one of the major, let's say, skills of somebody who works with any authority. Okay, how to convince parents, okay, to gather such a support system, how to overcome the objections, the difficulties of those parents. This is a skill that we developed and described. Then this new authority was based not on control of the child, you will do what I say, but on self-control. I will do as I say. I'm doing as I say. Okay, this is self-control in two senses. Self-control in the sense that the parent doesn't explode, okay, doesn't flip out, okay, but is in control of his actions, of his or her stance. And then self-control in a positive sense. This is my responsibility, being a teacher, being a parent. This is my duty, and I'll fulfill it. This is positive self-control. So we said that authority does not need to be based on control of the child. You do what I say, but on saying, I will do what I say, or we support, we will do what we say. Actually, even when the parent, the teacher says I, they learn to mean we. Okay, there are this kind of, okay, wide shoulders. Okay, this we, I know that I'm not alone anymore. And there's a fourth element, structure. Okay, this is not very, very different from the authority of all, only structure. Structure means routine, means limits, means also personal limits, the personal space of the parents, my room, my bed, this belongs to structure. But in the new authority, the structure is maintained by presence, self-control, and support, not by rigid imposition. Okay, those will be the basis of the new authority. We have also shown that these four elements go together. And we have developed a questionnaire, which is called the new authority questionnaire, okay, so in which all these four elements are measured, and we have shown that they go together, they create a concept, an overall concept, which is the new authority. Now then we asked ourselves, how would this kind of authority reflect itself in the child's development? This was a further developmental, a further conceptual development in our approach. How would all of these elements, okay, actually impinge on the child's psychological development? Then we came up with an overarching concept, probably the concept of the greatest generality in the whole of our approach. We reached the conclusion that when parents exercise, develop, manifest this kind of authority based on presence, self-control, support, and structure, they fulfill an anchoring function for the child. That means their authority is not like this, but it is like this. They anchor themselves and they offer an anchor for the child that stabilizes. Actually, the parents stabilize the child as they stabilize themselves. They stabilize themselves by presence, self-control, support, and structure, and by stabilize, because an anchor, okay, if the parents want to function as an anchor, the parent has to anchor him or herself before, okay? An anchor that is not anchored on the ground cannot anchor anything, okay? So the parent anchors him or herself in those four functions and thereby serves as an anchor that stabilizes the child itself. Now, this idea of the anchoring function gave us a link to the most important developmental theory at hand, and that is attachment theory. We said that the anchoring function of the new authority is one of the main elements in secure attachment. This was actually the first time in which the field of authority, as I said, there is a lot of research on the field of authority. The research that started with Diane Baumrind and a lot, but that research, that theorizing on authority, was not connected to attachment theory. So you have two elements of developmental psychology, authority, and attachment theory that were not at all connected. So the concept of the anchoring function served as a bridge between theorizing and research on authority and attachment theory. Actually, it is our contribution to attachment theory. We say that the anchoring function is an additional foundation, necessary foundation of secure attachment. Okay, there were those two accepted foundations of secure attachment, which are safe haven and the secure base. Safe haven is the parental embrace, readiness, to receive the child, support and embrace and show love, unconditional acceptance of the child when the child is in need. This is one side of the necessary foundations for the creation of secure attachment. And second was the secure base. Secure base is the role of encouragement. Look, now that you know that you can always come back to me, you can also go out. It's the side of encouragement. Secure base, go, my child. Look, explore the world. Everything is actually, the metaphor, a complex metaphor of a harbor. Safe haven is the harbor is protective. You can come in and be protected from tempests, from pirates, from everything. And then the harbor is open, also outwards. And that is the secure base. Go, the little ship, you can go. Look, the day is beautiful. The sea is quiet. You can go and navigate and explore. And we said those are necessary, definitely, but not sufficient. We need a third function. For what will happen when the little ship starts to throw itself against the other ships in the harbor or against the walls of the harbor, or when the little ship is drawn by waves or by the calls, the appeal of the sirens when it is still not ready? We need another function. The anchor. It has to be anchored. As the child grows, the anchor, the rope, the anchor chain, let's say, gets longer and longer and longer. At the end of the process, the wish, the desire, the developmental goal is that the child internalizes the parental anchor and has its own anchor. Okay, then can lift anchor and know that he can stabilize himself alone. This internalization of the anchoring function is one of its important elements. So we see how the anchoring function complements the other functions of secure attachment. Okay, now we had this conceptual development. It also creates a very good possibility of talking to parents. You talk to parents about anchoring their child, they are very responsive. Or anchoring themselves to stabilize the child, they are very responsive. Okay, so it creates a whole language of talking to the child. This is one central element of how we develop our skills as a therapist in NVR or New Authority. Okay, now, the moment we had this concept of the anchoring function, we both started to understand things that we didn't understand before, like, for instance, why variation of NVR was also effective with anxiety disorders. How comes NVR and anxiety? You're not fighting anything in anxiety disorders. Okay? So you don't use non-violent resistance against anxiety. But anchoring, yes. Because what is an anxiety disorder? The child is simply borne away, carried away by waves of anxiety. Anxiety is like big waves. The child is borne away, carried away. And parents are carried away with the child. They become anxious, or the child's being anxious. They start doing all kinds of the things in a panic so the child doesn't panic. We couldn't explain how we can stop that with the concept of NVR, but we could explain how we can do it with the concept of the anchoring function. Okay, I'll be offering a number of online courses. The second online course that I'll be offering is about anxiety disorders, disorders of what I call accommodation. We'll see that, which is exactly how to help parents anchor themselves to stabilize the child against those waves, so that neither the parent nor the child carried away by those waves of anxiety. Then we call it also and other disorders, an anchoring function anxiety and other disorders of accommodation. We're going to hear immediately, what is this accommodation thing? Then, okay, when we developed the anchoring function, we also understood, or it allowed us to build new applications of a New Authority anchoring function, NVR. One of them, or the most important of them, was developed in the UK by Peter Jacob, anchoring function in multi-traumatic and multi-problem families. I think is the most important clinical development of NVR since the publication of the first edition of the book. Okay, now here we have Courageous Parents Becoming a Good Anchor for Your Children. This is a book that is meant both for parents and for therapists. You can get it as an ebook or in printed form from Amazon. Okay, you see the anchor here. Okay, so that's becoming a good anchor for your children. All of these ideas are put together in very accessible language for parents and therapists alike. Why therapists? Do therapists need such a presentation in very simple language? Because they can learn how to speak to parents. Okay, this is in parental language, let's say like this. I'll give you here an example of an announcement for an anxiety problem, okay, which has led to school refusal. Okay, and you see how this idea of the announcement, which was one of the things that we developed in NVR, one of the central tools in NVR, can be easily modified to help with school refusal. Dear Paul, we've decided no longer to accept your refusal to go to school. You see, it's not you go to school. We've decided no longer to accept your refusal. But being a student is your central duty at this stage of your life, demands, very clear demands, say structure. Now we know that you're anxious and we are convinced that your anxiety is true and paid for. Validation. Okay, there is validation. The presence is a positive presence. We know that you're anxious. You're not dramatizing. Okay, it's true. However, we don't believe that giving in to anxiety will help you. On the contrary. Okay, this parental stance. I'm here and I stay here. This is my stance. Here I'm anchoring myself. Therefore, we'll do, you see the we language, we'll do all we can to get you back to school. We will do all we can. It's not you go back to school. We'll do. We will ask for help from anyone who can help us. This is the element which is central to any announcement. Okay, we lift the veil of secrecy. We become a we, and we say, it's very interesting. When parents are given the assignment to write an announcement, we tell them what are the elements. Very often they forget, okay, because they have a difficulty with this part, and making that clear and dealing with that difficulty is one of the most important skills of an NVR therapist. We do this because we love you and care for you. It's very clear, the motivation. It's not you'll obey, you say what I do. We do this because we love and care, and also because we understand how hard the present situation is for you. Okay, very short, a positive ending. You don't need to apologize, to explain yourself, to justify yourself too much. You see, this is a typical announcement for an anxiety problem. We have a lot of varieties because this branch of NVR, or of the new authority, okay, dealing with anxiety disorders or disorders of parental accommodation, created a whole spat of new implementations. Okay, what is this thing, accommodation? Accommodation is a concept that emerged in the field of anxiety disorders in the 90s. But in the beginning, there was a first article in 1995 by the team of Calvo Coresi, which showed that with adults who suffer from OCD, okay, the gravity, the extent of OCD was connected to accommodation by other family members, spouse, children, parents sometimes. What is this accommodation? They go out of their way in order to accommodate the demands of this old person with OCD. Okay, they flexibilize themselves. Okay, they adapt themselves. They create the surroundings in which the person with OCD won't feel challenged, won't feel opposed, on the contrary, because when this person is opposed, they gets into very, very deep anxiety and can become aggressive and things like that. That's accommodation. Accommodation is the process whereby parents or the rest of the family change their rules, their act, their behavior in order that the person with OCD won't experience anxiety and won't react accordingly. It's an appeasement, it's an act of appeasement, you can say, to the person with OCD. In 2000, this finding was extended to the field of children with OCD by the work of Edna Foa and her colleagues. And then the career of this concept of parental accommodation was amazing. There were more and more articles showing that parental accommodation was not only linked, correlated with the gravity of any anxiety disorder, not only OCD, also depression, with a whole series. Okay? So parental accommodation, it was understood that it was not only correlated, it was also one of the causes of chronicity and dysfunction. And the children, it was little by little shown that if you reduce accommodation, you gradually reduce also anxiety disorder. Okay, this was completely new. So there are many studies. And this has led to our manual for dealing with anxiety disorders called the SPACE manual. You can see here, but SPACE is an acronym for supportive parenting for anxious childhood emotions. But space has also the meaning as a word space because the parents, let's say, reestablish, redefine their own space, their room, their ability to use time, their work. This is my space. They defend their space, they protect their space, and then they stop accommodating. In accommodation, their space is completely open for the child. Child sleeps on the parent's bed, enters when he wants, disturbs them in the work because he's anxious, can phone them all the time of day. So creating space is an element, a central element in stopping and inducing accommodation. Now, this is the SPACE manual. It's actually a manual, it's a therapeutic manual. There is a book by Eli Leibovich and myself on anxiety disorder that presents this manual, real therapeutic manual designed also for training and research. The second row of lectures in this year's series we present among other things, detailed presentation of the SPACE manual. Now the question is, why NVR, or New Authority Methods, self-inquiry, parental self-inquiry? Why it can effectively help parents reduce accommodation? And not to say you have to reduce accommodation. No, there are lots of difficulties that with NVR we become able to address. First of all, in NVR, New Authority, the needs of the parents, the suffering of the parents, the wishes of the parents are no less important than the needs of the child. So the family is not a circle with the child at the center, but it's actually an ellipse with two centers, parents and children. So we talk to the parents about their own needs, about their own suffering. Their suffering is not less important and not less deserving of help than the child's suffering. For the parents, it's the big surprise. They say, no, we are here only to help our child, not important how difficult it is for us. Yeah, we say, but the problem is that if you cannot help yourselves, if you're not willing to help yourselves to live better, to feel better, to set the rules of behavior at home, to protect yourselves, there's no chances that your child will live better and feel better. And this kind, putting the parents themselves, their desires, their wishes, their pain, their stress, as one of the goals. And we say, of course, we keep the child's needs all the time in mind, but we have to keep also your needs in mind. This has a very powerful, engaging capacity. Parents open their eyes when you talk like that to them. So that's one of the reasons why in our approach, we're particularly helpful. Why NVR, New Authority, is particularly helpful in helping parents reduce accommodation. Then we have developed, we describe them in the SPACE manual, or as we shall see, we talk about also there's an implementation for the parents of adult children. I'll be referring to that soon. We answer to parental concerns, parental fears, systematically. Fears of the reaction of the child, fears that the child will be traumatized. Fears that the situation will escalate terribly, fears that the child will commit suicide. That all we have very detailed answers to those parental concerns. We have developed those detailed answers. Particularly, we have good answers for the fear of escalation, which is a big thing. When parents stop accommodating, the child will protest, and sometimes protest in extreme ways, escalation, and will try to to bring the parents back to their old accommodating role, by force if necessary, or by screaming, or by pleading, in many ways. So we have good ways to contain escalation without abandoning the child. Okay, so that's one of the important things that we have in NVR. Then we're very good at reducing accommodation, because in NVR, the parents' activities are supported and legitimized. So parents are much more able to do them. They don't only do that because they decided. There's nothing arbitrary in that anymore. This process of legitimization, of support, is extremely helpful in the process of accommodation. There's also studies showing that when the parents are legitimized by their surroundings, the child or the adolescent is more willing to accept limits and demands. It's very interesting how it goes. There's also another reason why support is so important for anxiety disorders or disorders of accommodation, and it is that children and adolescents are much less dependent, regressive, and anxious in the presence of supporters than in the presence of their parents. So that supporters can play a positive role in the process of the accommodation by being with the child, sometimes with the parents, sometimes instead of the parents. It's very interesting how we do it. But parental anchoring is much more than reducing accommodation. Reducing accommodation, say it is, we stop doing this and this and this. Parental anchoring is also the fulfillment of a positive role. They stabilize the child by giving something to the child, by giving themselves as parents, okay, but in a positive, legitimate, and not self-sacrificing way. Okay, the self-sacrifice of accommodation is well-meaning, but is not good for the child or for the parents. Okay, what did we learn? There's a lot of research. I'll give you some reference, okay, on the research on NVR, New Authority, with disorders of accommodation. Okay, first of all, effectiveness of NVR with anxiety disorders. We have shown not only OCD. Okay, there was clear studies, okay, by Eli Leibovich, first of all, with anxiety disorders, all kinds of anxiety disorders. We've shown effectiveness. By the way, Space Manual was first shown to be effective with the parents of children who refuse any kind of therapy for themselves. Okay, so the only option is to treat the parents, and those are particularly difficult cases. We have shown that even with these difficult cases in which the child refuses any kind of therapy, the effectiveness of NVR is as high as the effectiveness of those kind of individual therapies like CBT with children who are willing to get the therapy, which is a big result. And we showed effectiveness with OCD. Okay, we showed effectiveness with high functioning autism spectrum disorder with, again, some modifications. There are small modifications, but important modifications. For instance, with children with autism spectrum disorders, you know that we have these principles that you should, okay, you should hit the iron when it is cold. That means there is a delay in the response, very important for preventing escalation. Parents use this delay with children or adults also with high functioning autism spectrum disorders. Use this delay also to develop a mentalizing message. When they come back to the child, they tell him, we know, we understand that when this and this happens, you feel like this, and like this. But when you behave like that, we feel like this, and like this. Therefore, we have decided that from now on we'll react this way and this way. This mentalizing element is very important for children with autism. Then Eli Leibovich and Yara Shimshoni have developed, have adapted the manual, the space manual, to avoid and restrictive food intake disorder. This is not anorexia nervosa or bulimia. It is a disorder now, accredited, it's part of the canon of disorders, RFID, It is children who dislike food. From small, from real, they don't want, they're disgusted, they can eat only this and this and this and only this and this and that way. Is the total nightmare of the Jewish mother. My child won't eat, and she's tearing her hair because of that. So they adapted the manual, space manual, to avoid the restrictive food intake disorder, showed effectiveness. They also showed high acceptability, both by the parents and by the child. And we have also developed a parallel manual, detailed manual to adult entrenched dependencies. Those are already young adults, not so young adults, who stay at home, who could remain dependent of their parents, don't work, don't study, and very problematic relationships developed. We are the first in the literature to offer a detailed manual. It's a modification of space, but it's a serious modification here. These are the references for anxiety studies and also for RFID. You see here at the bottom, autism, Golan and Chilo. Here is a study on Leibovitz, Stolberg, Nortov, and Omer for nonviolent resistance for adult entitled dependence. Now we call it entrenched dependence. These are the studies. This is the book, Non-Emerging Adulthood, Helping Parents of Adult Children with Entrenched Dependence by Dan Domerman and myself. This is the manual. And like a new epidemic, this entrenched dependence, these young adults, we know there's a lot of data showing that this is so. Well, there were many things that we learned from this research, not only the issue of effectiveness. We learned that this approach, space, or these variations of space, was very helpful not only to child stress, definitely with the child's anxiety symptoms, but also parental stress. That the approach is very effective in engaging the parents. Dropout rates are extremely low compared to the whole literature. Extremely low. We are between 5 and 20% dropout, whereas other training approaches, well-established training approaches like parent management training, have rates of dropout between 30 and 60%. The difference is very highly acceptable. Positive effects on the parent-child relationship. The parents are resisting and the relationship is improving. This is not expected, is it? And there is an increase in the child's readiness for individual therapies, for instance, in the case of anxiety. I told you about that initial study by Eli Leibovich with the parents of children who refused all therapy altogether. So he treated 10 families. And there were significant improvements in child anxiety and symptomatology, but the child still suffered. Anxiety doesn't disappear. Child functions better, is able to go to school, is more able to socialize, can sleep on his own bed, but still experience a lot of anxiety. It's not that it miraculously stops. Improvements, but it doesn't miraculously stop. But then, Eli Leibovich, he asked those children after the parents had undergone that therapy, if they would be willing to have a therapy for themselves, CBT, that's what he offered. And 7 out of the 10 children were willing, sometimes eager to get a therapy. So he asked them, why did they change their minds? And their answers were very interesting. Some of them said, before, I didn't believe I would be able to survive those attacks of anxiety that I would get crazy or die. Now I know that I can survive them. This I've seen, I can survive them. If I can survive them, maybe I can also learn to suffer less. They're irrational, right? Second kind of answer was, well, before I didn't want to go to therapy because I thought that if I went to therapy, my parents would stop doing all of those things that they were doing for me, the accommodation. Now they've stopped doing anyhow, so I have nothing to lose anymore. Now it's very interesting, 70%, 7 out of 10, okay? 7 out of 10 were now willing to undergo individual treatment. This also shows there is a lot of acceptability, okay, the children see. It is not only that parent engagement is high and levels of dropout are low. We have been able to identify elements that lead to high parental engagement. Okay, we'll see that in the next field. ADHD, okay, ADHD belongs to externalizing disorders, but one of the interesting and important developments to our mind is that we have developed a manual. Okay, Erik Shorts-Sapir, okay, she's in this article, she's written this article. There are already 2 studies. The second has not yet been published. We're still analyzing the result. The second is even bigger than the first and larger follow-ups. Okay. She has written a manual. She can be contacted. I can give you her contacting. The manual is still in Hebrew, but you can get information from her on special implementation of our method to ADHD. And she has done 2 big controlled studies. We have developed we use classical measures for the symptoms of ADHD. Okay, there's some classical, everybody uses that. Then we have developed a parental hassle questionnaire, because what happens many times in ADHD, the child is bombarded, okay, by stimuli, and the parents, the child goes this way, that way, because all the stimuli are, and the parents are whirled around. There's a merry-go-round, parental hassles. At the end of the day, the parents are completely exhausted, the child is not. And we have developed, I said already, the parental anchoring questionnaire, because when we talk about ADHD, we are talking clearly about anchoring, about stabilizing, how the parents can stabilize themselves. Okay, in the middle of this tempest, this whirlpool, this tornado, ADHD, and stabilizing themselves, help the child become stable. Well, in those studies, Erik Shorts-Sapir has shown that there is a difference between what is called the core symptoms of ADHD, that is the part that is supposed to be constitutional, inborn, attention, okay, those things, attention, span of attention, concentration, and the functional symptoms of ADHD, impulsive behaviors, aggression, okay, ability to accept limits, demand, this is functional. In all probability, the core symptoms are hypothesized to be of neurophysiological origin. We don't discuss that, okay? It's not we have no fight with that. Well, we have a clear influence on the core symptoms of ADHD, but it appears to be transitory, okay? At the end of treatment, there is a clear improvement in the core symptoms, but then at the follow-up, they start vanishing. And that is just natural. We would expect it to be so if those are part of the neurophysiological predisposition of these children. But on the functional symptoms of ADHD, behavioral symptoms, the improvement continues. And in all probability, it is those functional symptoms that determine the consequence of ADHD for the child's development. Then we have also measured family cares. With an accepted family care is essential. Children with ADHD create cares around them. So there is a systematic and progressive reduction in family cares. That means between the end of therapy and the follow-up, family cares continually continues being reduced. And now, a very particular, very special finding of these studies refers to the child's anxiety and depression. You know, many children with ADHD have a comorbidity of anxiety and depression, but even if they don't, they suffer a lot from anxiety and depression. I mean, if they don't get a diagnosis of anxiety disorder, depressive disorder, they suffer a lot from anxiety and depression. Now, in the manual, we didn't target anxiety and depression. Not in this manual. It was anchoring the child in the front of the ADHD, again, the hassles, the whirlpool. And yet, there was a systematic improvement in the child's anxiety and depression that continued growing between the end of therapy and the follow-up period. The first study was 4 months, and the second study a year. So this means that the child is not only behaving better, the child is also feeling better. Less anxiety, less depression, also less somatization. Okay, so this is a very important answer to criticisms. Okay, some people criticize NVR as being against the child, a shaming the child. Okay, quite okay. We have good answers to that kind of, but okay, improvements in anxiety, depression. So how comes the child is feeling better, suffering less? Then another important result is high levels of parental engagement, 5% of dropout here in this system, and very high levels of father engagement. But we developed, okay, you have to take care. We have developed ways in NVR of engaging fathers. We know fathers are more difficult to engage than mothers. They're less psychologically minded. Okay, they have perhaps less interest in psychotherapy. Well, we found good ways of talking to fathers. And it shows appears we got 95% father engagement in the whole therapy. This is absolutely exceptional. We help the mother to bring the father. If the mother says he won't agree, we talk to the father. We emphasize the very practical elements of NVR because fathers many times, this will be very practical. We'll get actual tips on how to do this. You'll get, and we emphasize to the fathers the element of strength. You get stronger. Much stronger than you ever heard. Not stronger this way, but stronger this way that you'll be able to withstand, to abide, not to give in. This is very important to fathers. And we have also developed good ways, to entice these fathers. Say the father says, no, I'm sorry, my wife is enough. I say, please come to one session. And then if you decide that why we need you in one session, because we need your point of view, otherwise we'll be completely biased, completely without your point of view. We'll be losing something of value, okay? So they say, okay, one session, I'll come. And then they stay. Okay, it's very interesting how we do it. Okay, so this was, okay, we have now covered this element. An important new development, practical development, that we systematically built it since 2004 and up to today is the field of parental vigilant care. Parental vigilant care is actually parental presence when it is focused on risk activities, on dangerous behaviors, self-destructive behaviors, problematic behaviors. How can the parents develop this kind of finger on the pulse? Now, why did we coin a special term? Because it is a mix of physical and mental presence. It is a kind of presence that involves presence and vigilance, care and vigilance. So we coined a new term. But it's not different. It's something between mental presence, being present in the mind of the child, having the child think about me when he is tempted, when she is tempted, in all kinds of situations, okay? and a mix of this mental accompanying mental presence and physical presence when it is absolutely necessary. That is, the child is really endangering him or herself, and now the parent has to come there. Okay, so vigilant care, it is completely different from parental monitoring. Okay, it is different. Okay, it's different from parental monitoring in a parallel way in which the new authority is different from the old authority. Parental monitoring is a controlling stance. You monitor just like in industry, okay? Monitor and control. There are two elements in parental monitoring, okay? Knowing all the time, and controlling, okay? So now parental vigilant care is not like that, okay? Parental monitoring is like linear. The more monitoring, the less risk. It turns out it's not like that. There's a lot of criticism and there is research showing that this kind of parental monitoring can be damaging to the parent-child relationship, damaging in creating a lot of child opposition, damaging in making the child lose his own autonomy. In many ways, it's impinging on the child. This idea of vigilant care so relates to parental monitoring like the new authority relates to the old authority. It is a multi-level activity. You don't go and intensify vigilant care always. On the contrary, you keep it at the lowest possible level so long as there are no alarming signs of danger. The lowest possible level is the level of open attention. Open attention, that means the parents are attentive to the child, they want to know, but they don't impinge, they don't investigate. Okay? They ask questions, but questions that show interest, curiosity of my child. They get in touch with people and the child's surroundings because it is important. It is important that I know your teachers. Yes, I want to know also other parents of the children in your class. It's part of your life. Okay, but they don't spy on the child. They don't do it at all. Always parental vigilant care is on the table. It's not behind the child's back. And it's mainly inattentive, but there is a higher level. Let's say that the child begins to lie, or to disappear, or to refuse. Then the parents step up, intensify vigilant care to a middle level, focused attention. Like, for instance, how do they go over from open attention to focused attention? Openly. Everything in vigilant care is open on the table. Nothing is done behind the child's back. Nothing. Okay, so in parental vigilant care, they tell the child, you know, in the last 2 weeks that I've been some alarming events. You told me you'd go to this friend, and then it turned out that you were not there at all. You were there. Or you said you'd come back at 9 o'clock, and you come back at 11 o'clock at night. And when I called you, you refused to talk to me. So from now on, until things settle down again, every time you go out, I'll ask you 4 questions. Where are you going? With whom? What is the program? And we have to stipulate together when you're coming back. If those 4 points are taken care of, if you're honest with them, then you can go and meet with your friends and do what I have to do. And the parents abide by this decision. And we have shown that 85% of the children then answer or cooperate with these 4 points. Sometimes, they make a bad face, but they do it. So this is focused attention. And then there is the highest level of vigilant attention when there are even more signs of alarm, things where the child refuses completely to abide by these conditions and simply vanishes, disappears, or there are other signs of danger, all kinds, money, the child has money and you don't know where it comes from. Friends, new friends that come and the child doesn't allow you to know. The child keeps disappearing, then you step it up to the highest level of vigilant care. And this is unilateral steps. Parents act now, they become physically present too, to get the child out of danger, to get the child. This is the And then when it is possible, they go down to focus attention. And when it's possible, they go down to open attention. We have shown that parents who train in vigilant care know how to regulate their level of vigilance, of vigilant care, according to danger signs, to actual danger signs. Like, for instance, helicopter parents. Helicopter parents are parents who hover all the time over the child. Problematic candidate. They learn to reduce their level of vigilant care, to focus attention, and to open attention. We've shown that this is true also with the parents of delinquent children, that they also can step it down when necessary and step it up when necessary. So it's completely different from parental monitor, which is linear. And our idea, our hypothesis, and we checked it, is that vigilant care, this parental attitude, this preventive attitude against all kinds of danger behaviors, of risk behaviors, gets internalized. That means parental vigilant care is transformed into self-care, like in the image of the anchor, okay, that as the ship grows, it becomes able to lift anchor, develops its own anchor. The child learns to care for him or herself. This is the book that very practical, Parental Vigilant Care, a guide for clinicians and caretakers. That's from the chapter on lying, a chapter on bad company, very important things that are not usually. These are 4 studies. These are the fields that we have already demonstrated. Okay, the importance and effectiveness of vigilant care, of this kind, this mix of parental, of physical and mental presence according to need. The first study mentioned here, if it's the effects of vigilant care and feedback on novice driver risk. Okay, novice drivers. Okay, what we did in this study is that we built in a machine in the family car, so we got objective feedback on the dangerous maneuvers of the child, how dangerously this teen was driving. Okay, so it's the first time that this is done in the literature. Intervention was 90 minutes in the parents' house in the presence of the teen. Okay, but it was the parents who were being trained. Okay, this was the first. We helped the parents to be present in the child's mind. Like, for instance, okay, the child is going out on the weekend, Saturday night, okay, to a party. So the parents give him the key to the car. Then the mother says to the child, I have only 2 small requests. I'm giving you the key to the car. My 2 small requests is that you send me 2 messages, 2 WhatsApps. Once when you get there, when you get to your friend's house, you send me a message. Arrived. That's it. I don't need more. Then I can know that you're well. And then another message before midnight. Okay, everything okay? And I can go and sleep well. The mother requests these messages, and we have also shown here also 85% positive response when the mother says, no, I'm giving you the key to the car. What do I want? 2 messages, I don't deserve to sleep well. Okay, so we get that 85% we can raise this over 85% when the child refuses and says, no, mom, I'm with my friends. I don't want to. The father comes there and says, look, my boy, when your mother doesn't sleep, I don't sleep too. So you're going to send this message. Okay, we see this different in style. If it belongs, if it fits with this family, we can help them. Okay, coordinate themselves like that. So look, I want to show you. This is a graph. Okay, this is the events rate, the dangerous events rate, like speeding, sudden braking, swerving. There are 5 kinds of it. And solo dated means the time that the child, the teen, starts driving on his own and accompanied by his parent. Oh, sorry. It is the 0 point. This is the, okay. And as you see, this is the curve of the children where there's no training of the parents. We need only those 2 groups. The red one and the violet one. In the violet curve, we see that immediately when the child, the teen, starts driving on his own, there's a steep rise on dangerous events, which continues rising 6 months, okay? And we know, research shows very clearly that new drivers are dangerous. Males, okay, the girls are not dangerous. They make all kinds of small accidents, money. But the dangerous accidents are the boys. So the study was made with boys, with males. And this is the curve of the children, of the teens, whose parents were trained, 90 minutes training on vigilant care. There is a very mild rise, okay, but the child is driving better. He knows what he can do and what he cannot do. Okay, but it is very steep, very profound difference. And this is the first time that such gains were shown objectively. It's not reports. Okay, if we go back to the studies, there is this study by Rotman Kabir, supervising without controlling, a new authority intervention for adolescents with type 1 diabetes. Okay, it's just been published. We have shown also, it's a program, it's already 10 sessions program with parents, adolescents with type 1 diabetes. We've shown improvements in parental knowledge, improvements in attitudes towards risk behaviors by the parents and the child, and also improvements in the child's actual metabolic condition. This is the first study that was done of vigilant care in an area of health psychology, crucial area of health psychology. Now, this is very important for every parent, examining efficacy of technological parental monitoring, those are filters actually, versus parental vigilant care for reducing problematic internet usage among adolescents. Problematic. It's a doctoral dissertation. It's now in review. The article is already in advanced stage of review. We hope to have it published very soon. But people who are interested, I can get you in contact with Yaron Sela, who did this study. It's a doctoral dissertation. Again, in the study also, we had objective data that we got from the internet savers, from use of the child's smartphone. Okay, with agreement of the child and the parent, they agreed that we received the data from the servers. Okay, so, okay, and you see, these are the data total. These were 3 sessions, 3 group sessions of training of parents or children who really abused the internet. So we have total effects of total time online. Okay, the black line as the experimental group. That means the group that got the training in parental vigilant care. And this is the group, the control group. So we began between 5 and 6 hours use a day. And look what happened with the control group. It went up to 6 or so. And look what happened with the vigilant care group. Okay, it was less than half. Look at night time, use even deeper difference. Gaming was a parental concern, what it was. And all of these was achieved, all of this was achieved with a reduction in parent-child conflicts. Incredible, isn't it? Parents are increasing, stepping up their presence, their knowledge, and conflicts are going down. Okay, so the last study was a study that we finished also on delinquent children, okay, children who had already been caught by the police and had judiciary proceedings against them. Okay, this was a guidance, the training of the parents, 10 sessions, group training of the parents. Okay, we also got the results that we expected. Another important field, and with this I'll conclude, I won't be able to cover this field too, is the field of implementations of new authority in schools, courageous teachers developing a new authority to cope with violence and chaos. Also, you can get this in ebook or in printed form. Okay, we have already amassed a lot of experience in helping teachers and school principals, in helping improve teacher-parent relationships. We have a whole course of parent-teacher diplomacy for teachers, 8 hours course, and it improves their ability to engage positively with parents, increase cooperation, or at least to reduce the attacks, the undermining of parents against teachers, against the school. That is the least result that we get. We get teachers to work together with parents, not with all, but at least with many. Okay? We get teachers to work together with themselves to constitute a we responses. And in the end, we also get cooperation by children, for instance, in a very important, crucial field, okay, of mobbing. Okay, children see that the teachers are now engaged in the prevention of mobbing and they join in. We see that. Okay, we have checked it, but we won't be able in this lecture to cover this field. So thank you very much.